Good morning, everybody, or whatever time it is that you're tuning in. We're now in the middle of chapter 20 in Ma'amar Hikhaltsu, and we are trying to understand on a very deep level why it is that Moshe, when he commands the Jewish people to do battle against Midian, he specifically uses the term Nikmat Hashem, the vengeance of Yud-Ke Vav-Ke, that name of God, the vengeance of the Lord. As a matter of fact, when God said to Moshe, go fight against Midian, he said, Nikmat Yisrael, the vengeance of the Jewish people. So the fact that Moshe changed it and the way he changed it is very significant. And we're in the middle of a deep discussion, somewhat technical and Kabbalistic, about the significance of that name Yud-Ke Vav-Ke, the difference between that name and the name Elohim, and how it's somehow Yud-Ke Vav-Ke, that the tetragrammaton, the four-letter name of God, is the appropriate response or antidote to Midian, which is the notion of quarrelsomeness, of multiplicity, of inability to get along, which ultimately flows from the sense of substance, of ego-ness that a person has, that don't breathe my air, right? Don't take up my space. You walk in the room, there's not enough room for the both of us, okay? So let's go back into now the distinction between Hashem and Elohim, those two names of God. And I think what I want to do is just back up slightly, and we'll just get a running start from the beginning of chapter 20. Okay, so beginning of chapter 20. This is the difference between the name Hashem and the name Elohim. Truth of the matter is that both these names of God are one. The Shem Elohim hu Ein Sof Mamash Kamo Shem Havaya. The name Elohim obviously is ultimately an expression of Ein Sof, the infinite God, just like Yud-Ke Vav-Ke is an expression of the infinite God of Ein Sof. Ein Hashem Elohim Mastir Klal Al Shem Havaya. So based upon this, the name Elohim, the name of God that we use to associate multiplicity, creation, differentiation, that name of God does not at all conceal the Shem Havaya, the name of God, which is Yud-Ke Vav-Ke, which we usually understand as being more transcendent. So one doesn't really conceal the other. That in fact, based upon this, even multiplicity, the fact that creation is made of all these differentiated entities, right? Infinitely so. All the we discussed in the past, we said there's 7 billion people in the world, right? Whatever the number is, that no two people look alike, even if they're genetically the same. That in fact, the multiplicity is in fact flowing from the unity of God, and is a reflection of that, as we'll mention in a second. So the name Elohim is the expression of God which creates the multiplicity and differentiation. The So we pointed out last time, this is where we ended off, I believe, yesterday, that ironically, the very fact of multiplicity is itself an expression of the Ein Sof, the infinitely transcendent and perfect God. Why? Because the very term that Kabbalah likes to use to refer to God, Ein Sof, God as he is in his essence, Ein Sof, without end. That's what that literally means, without end, the infinite God. So Ein Sof itself communicates the notion of infinity. So the fact that we have an infinite differentiation, right? So 7 billion and counting. Anybody having a baby right now? And counting. So that multiplicity of differentiation is itself, ironically, an expression of Ein Sof, of the infinite God. So rather than looking at multiplicity as somehow an impingement on the infinity of God, it's actually an expression of the infinity of God. Achinyan de Ein Sof mitzad shleimut shebo harei nosei b'atzmo ribui ad ein kates v'ad ein shiur b'bchinat ein sof. Ach hakol bo b'chinat ha'achdut b'chinat yachid mamash. Deino shayach lomar sham pratim chas v'shalom v'itachdut ha'pratim ki im b'chinat yachid mamash. וזה אי אפשר לומר מבחינת יחיד שבו שולל הריבוי. מצד השלמות בהכרח לומר שנושא ריבוי גם כן והכל בחינת יחיד ממש. כמו שכתוב במקום אחר, זהו עניין השלמות דווקא בו שנושא הרווחים ולא בחינת קו אחד. אמנם אינם בו בחינת הופכים חס ושלום, כי אם שניהם כאחד ממש. ודבר זה לא ניתן בהשכל הסיבו איך ומהו על כגון זה אמרו עליו Yedativ Hayitiv. Okay, now, here's the rub. You see, at a certain point, there is a paradox that we can't fully appreciate. So we just made the point, which is itself ironic, that the very Ein Sofness, I made up a new word, the Ein Sofness of God, the unlimited nature of God that brings into being infinite differentiation. So at the same time, ultimately, obviously, it's flowing from unity, right? Divine unity. And in fact, all of the differentiation doesn't exist in a state of polar opposites which are in conflict with each other. You see, where this is eventually going to be going is, that's the mistake we make, that we're products of that differentiation, right? The fact that we have 100 people in this room participating in the shiur. So first and foremost among them is Zev Steiner. So, and then we have Rabbi Zeph, low life. So they may seem to be opposite. You have a stellar, amazing Jew, and you have a low life. So that seems to be polar opposites. So, but that is not true. There's no oppositional, adversarial nature between the opposite parts. They're actually all flowing from the unity of God. So how you can have this fractionalization, like a fraction in math, multiplicity, differentiation, but somehow each of those doesn't impinge upon unity, and they all are collectively an expression of harmonious unity. So we can't fully understand that. It's flowing from the oneness of God. And he quotes this expression that I actually didn't know what the source of this was, but the footnote here, I'd heard this expression in the past, but the footnote here says that the source of the Sefer Ikarim, which is a medieval philosophical book, in which the author of Yosef Albo tries to enumerate what are the fundamental beliefs of Judaism, kind of like the Rambam did, 13 Principles of Faith. So the Rambam did it in 13 paragraphs, and Rav Yosef Albo did it in a big book, so written originally in Arabic. In any case, there's an expression here quoted, Ilu Yedativ Hayitiv. If I were to know God, I would be God. Okay, you may have heard an expression like that before. In other words, you really can't understand what this is all about fully unless you were God. Now, I think Zev Steiner is an amazing, incredible person, right? But he ain't God, as far as I know. So therefore, there's a certain humility, a certain humility that we have to have, that how multiplicity is a reflection of and flows from unity, So we have to just realize that there's a certain tension there that we just have to live with, even though we're exploring it in greater detail as we go through this. V'im kein yesh kan shnei devarim she nosei haribui v'kulam b'chinat ha'achdut d'yachid mamash. V'hitgalut yesh lomar shu al yedei shem havaya v'shem elokim. So it turns out that ironically, both the name Yud Ke Vav Ke and the name Elokim are both of them expressions of the revelation of God and differentiation, but in different ways. The Hashem Elokim megaleh ribui, that the name Elokim, it reveals the multiplicity. Okay, so the fact there's multiplicity in the world, that's Elokim. V'hu shiyu ribui nivraim aden case v'shiyur, and that's responsible for the fact that there is this incredible number and of differentiation, limitless. V'shem havaya megaleh v'chinat achdut. And the name Havaya also is related to multiplicity. But you know what it does? It shows, it's an expression of the underlying unity of all of those component parts. Shekol hamadrigot pratiot hein benetzalim ve'hein benivraim mitachadim mitkalim v'chinat hayichud deyachid. So that, what does it mean? What's the Yud Vav Ke showing? How does that relate to the differentiation? It shows how all of the component parts, in fact, that they are emanated from oneness, and in fact, therefore, that they're all united and in harmonious synthesis with unity, with the underlying unity. Sharibui pratim heinachad mamash. The multiplicity of the details are actually one. So I think the way we used it, we used a rather gruesome image yesterday. Body parts. I don't know why that the image that came to my mind. I got to think of like a more pretty image. But you can talk about body parts as body parts, like scattered over the pavement. You'll forgive this image. I'm sure we could find a better image. Or we could talk about the same parts, but we see them in constituting a harmonious whole. So I'm going to use a slightly better image, or more pleasant. How about puzzle pieces? So you take a big jigsaw puzzle. Okay. Now, actually,
how about Mr. Potato Head?
Mr. Potato Head. Thank you, Zev. Yeah. So let's take the puzzle. Let's move away from the body parts there. Mr. Potato Head is a person, So but a puzzle. So I think a jigsaw puzzle is called a jigsaw puzzle because, a jigsaw is a type of saw. Like if you went to Rio Americana High School and you took wood chop, right? Zev just showed his missing finger there. So you took wood chop. So you take a big picture and you put it on the, whatever it's called, the table there and the jigsaw, and you saw it up into a bunch of pieces. So it's one harmonious picture. Okay. So now you cut it into a bunch of pieces. And if you were to sort of scatter those pieces around the room, right? Like there used to be mean people. They want to play cards, 52 pickup. Yeah. Take the cards and just throw them out. Right. So take that with the puzzle pieces. So that's Elokim, right? Elokim is differentiation, scattering of the parts. And what the Shem Yud Ke Vav Ke does is it shows how all those scattered parts, that in fact they're actually are reflective of a harmonious whole. They're in harmony. So Elokim is the differentiation of the parts. And Yud Ke Vav Ke is also related to particularization, the fact they're parts, but the harmonious coexistence of those parts. The Yud Ke Vav Ke, it reveals the ultimate underlying unity, which flows from God's essence. Atzmut, which flows from God's essence. Now we're going to understand something pretty important. Now, in just a few minutes, we're going to daven. We're going to say the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, the affirmation of oneness of God. So you'll notice that it doesn't do two things. It doesn't say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Elokim Echad. It doesn't use the word Elokim, that name of God. It uses the Yud Kei Vav Kei name. Now that actually we can understand, because if we're trying to affirm the oneness of God, so Yud Kei Vav Kei name, based on what we just said, is a much better name for that purpose, because Elokim is the divine expression of creation, which creates differentiation. Yud Kei Vav Kei is the divine expression of creation, which reveals the underlying harmony, the oneness of all the component parts. So I understand that. But he asked now a very good question. Maybe there could have been a better way of expressing God's oneness. Maybe the better way of describing God's oneness would not to say Hashem Echad. That I understand. We'll use Yud Kei Vav Kei. But don't use the word Echad. Echad means one. Don't use that. Why? The word Echad is misleading. Okay? Shemoreh al achdut yoter me'echad. If it would have said Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Yachid, that would have been better. Now Yachid means singular, absolutely unique. Yachid means absolutely unique. That would have been a much better term than Echad at first glance. Okay, everything here is at first glance. Why? It's explained elsewhere the difference between them. Now, we're not going to look at the other place, but we're going to try to explain it here. See, the word echad in Hebrew, the function of that word echad is when you count. Echad, shnayim, shlosha, arba'ah, chamisha. Okay? Echad means one when you count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when we say Hashem is one, and we're using the word echad, oh my gosh, as Zev just pointed out, that is a dangerous and misleading, and I'm not sure why it's used, and we're going to explain in a second why. Because echad, you could say, sort of chas v'shalom, kind of the sense of a Greek pantheon, right? Good morning, gentlemen. The Greek pantheon. So, even idolatrous systems had a notion of, like a supreme god, Zeus or whatever, right? So many gods, but like there's the head honcho god. So if you say God is echad, one, right? He's the number one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The other ones are 2, 3, 4, 5. God is echad, number one. El Primo, number one. So, oh my gosh. So why say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad? God is one. Like he's the number one. He's not number two. Yachid would be a better term, because Yachid means absolutely unique, transcendent, above and beyond, not one among equals, as it were. Your expression one among equals? No. Absolutely unique. So we have to understand better what the word echad means. So there's a pasuk in Kohelet, in the book of Ecclesiastes, that the term echad can have a sense of echad ve'ein sheni lo, one, but there's no two. It's not first among equals. It's not I'm number one and you're two. It's echad, one, but there's no two. She'eno echad hamanui. It's not that there is one in the sense of counting. Velo hitachduta pratim ki liyot shapratim hem ribu shvatzmut v'Hashem avaya hu ikalut b'chinat yachid b'atzmut im kenu b'chinat yachid mamash. So rather, the notion of echad, in fact, is a concept which is God being, again, singular. So then why not use the word yachid, singular, instead of one? For the answer to that question, tune in, same bat time, same bat channel, and we will continue right with this point, this great mystery. Why does the Shema use the word echad rather than yachid? Yachid would be better. Yachid would give the sense of totally other, totally transcendent, no peer, not one among equals, not head honcho. So why use the term echad? Can you sleep until next Monday? No way. Checks in the mail. Bye-bye, everybody.